Hello and welcome to the Monthly Marquee. I'm your host, Bart Lovins, Director for the Hardin County Schools Performing Arts Center, and our first guest is also our Pat Kid Spotlight. Please welcome Miss Alyssa Vittitow, a 10th grader from Central Hardin High School. Alyssa, thank you so much for spending the day with us today. Now, we've been going around the limousine. We've been doing radio interviews and some podcasts and things, and now here we are. We want to thank Skaggs Limousine for helping us out, as always. This was your first limousine ride, right?
Yes.
So what did you think of that?
It was cool.
And just so people know, why are you here with us today? What are you doing at the Performing Arts Center this month?
I'm performing in The Little Women.
Mm-hmm. And what are you doing in the performance?
I am Mrs. Kirk.
Now tell us a little bit about that character.
She's like the head of the boarding house, and she has an Irish accent.
Ah, now that's something new for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
You've done 2 or 3 different shows with Central Hardin. What else have you been in?
Laramie Project, Urinetown, and The Crucible.
Which of the 4 has been the most challenging for you?
Probably Laramie Project.
That's what I was going to think too.
Because I was a swing, and I got a part 3 days before the performance.
Now, for people who don't know, what does that mean? What is a swing?
It's like an understudy.
Gotcha. So, and if people don't know Laramie Project, it's in regards to the Matthew Shepard case.
Yes.
And it is based on interviews with community people there where his death occurred.
Yes.
And so how many different characters did you play in that?
4.
4 different characters. Very different from each other too,
Yes.
I assume. Yeah.
Had to have a country accent for one, and yeah, it was very different.
How do you learn dialects, accents? How do you learn those? Because I think everybody has a different approach.
I don't really know. I just learned it.
You just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. I pick up dialects from, I find like a character on TV.
Yes.
Like I've heard you do your Irish accent today, and it reminds me very much of, and I'm going to say her name wrong, the woman who has the lead in Little Women, the movie right now, Saoirse Ronan. I can't think of her name.
I don't know.
The young who did Lady Bird and a few other movies.
I don't know.
But she's Irish, and your accent sounds very much like hers. It's very nice. And tell us a little bit about Little Women.
Well, it's about these 4 sisters and how they act towards each other and get along, but not always.
Sure, like sisters do.
Yeah, like sisters do.
Yeah.
And how their story goes.
And it's based upon, speaking of stories, it's based upon the Louisa May Alcott novel.
Yeah.
Now, had you read the novel before? No. Did you read it as part of your process? I know your character is not one of the main characters, so maybe you didn't dig into it. So how did you develop your character in the show?
Well, I kind of just, I read my lines and I figured out how I would like say them.
Yeah.
And how to like act towards them.
And did Miss Dakin give you any help with any of that?
Yes, she definitely did.
And she is the director of the production, right?
Yes.
And you've been working with her for several years now, right? What have you learned from her?
How to like produce better and
project?
Yeah, project.
Yeah.
And how to do better.
Sure. And the things that you've learned from working with Miss Dakin and coming to the Performing Arts Center and being on that stage and stuff, what kind of, do you know what I mean when I say life lessons?
Kind of.
What I mean by that is, what have you learned through these processes that helps you on a daily basis at school?
Maybe how to like act better.
How to deal with others?
Yeah.
Maybe? Yeah. How about your confidence level?
Oh, it's way higher.
Really? So,
Yeah.
So how were you before doing performing arts and now?
Well, I had confidence because
You've always had it.
Yeah, I've been
Okay.
on stage since I was 3. So, but it just has grown more and
Good.
more.
And I know one of the things that you're interested in is photography, and we were talking in the limousine ride earlier today. One of the things that you would be very interested in having at Central Hardin is a photography club.
Oh, yeah.
And I sensed immediately your confidence in trying to make something like that happen. And you've got some ideas of how to make that happen. You want to talk to Mr. Isaacs about it and things like that. I think that shows that you've got a lot of, you've become someone who sets goals. And I think that's a big part of performing as well.
Yes.
So then, if you were looking at someone who was just coming into Central Hardin High School as a freshman, what would you say to them to encourage them to become part of the drama club?
I would encourage them to be their self, that they can be their self, and they don't have to pretend to be anyone else.
Isn't that a big part of high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that people there are really supportive no matter what. And that you feel like you're becoming a big part of a family.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for being part of the PAC family and the Central Hardin Drama Club family. And we will see you at the end of this week in Little Women. And as you are in 10th grade, we have 2 more years to see all kinds of development and more characters and more dialects and all kinds of fun stuff.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Our next guest on the program is Jeff Curtis, director for Hardin County Playhouse's upcoming production, Night Mother. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me, Bart.
I'm always afraid that I say the title of this show right. Is it Good Night Mother or Night Mother?
It's Night Mother.
With apostrophe
with the apostrophe at the top,
as in Good Night Mother.
Right, and you know, people spell it wrong all the time too because they capitalize the N on the night, but because it's apostrophe, it's halfway through the word. It's small n, Night Mother.
So the apostrophe is capitalized. Yeah,
exactly.
What is this play about?
Well, it's about 2 women, a mother and a daughter, who, it's about a daughter who announces to her mother at the beginning of the night that she's going to kill herself. And then the mother spends the rest of the show trying to convince her daughter not to kill herself. But that is it in a nutshell. But if you just go by that, you'd say, well, why do I want to come see this show about someone killing themselves?
Yes.
It's kind of a... And which was my first response when I first got the script, is like, what, are you kidding? And then I read the script, and then when we started doing the script, what it really is it's this amazing story of these 2 women and their relationship with each other, and the suicide gives motivation for them to be more honest with each other than they've ever been in their entire relationship. And so you get to learn about the secrets they've been holding, especially Mama. You get to learn about their past, about the lies that they're coming to truth with. And you find this amazing love that the mother has for the daughter and that the daughter has for the mother, even though the daughter has in many ways checked out. And it's just, you spend the whole show, you don't spend the whole show weeping. The show is not a sad downer of the show to sit through. There are points where it's funny. There are points in it where it's profound. And it's not until you get to the end where it really gets gut-wrenching. But it's this amazing experience of learning about these 2 characters that are so human that they're like the people you know in your lives. And it's like coming to a show and watching your Aunt Sally in the kitchen or your mother in the kitchen. It's so much about those honest relationships. And the author, Marcia Norman, she wrote it in such a way where she's not taking sides. She's presenting these people as honest portrayals of and what they would honestly do in these circumstances and what their honest motivations are. And it's just this so powerful thing. I remember in our first rehearsal, you know, while nobody's off book, everyone's reading from the script, there were moments that were so profound that, you know, I wanted to weep just because they were so profound, not because I wanted to cry out of sadness, but because it was just that amazing.
The truism.
Yeah, it's the truth. So it's a powerful show that the subject matter is intense. It does deal with suicide, but but the story itself is this amazing journey to sit through, and the people who have come in and just sat in rehearsal, like Hannah when she was doing for makeup, or Angela who's doing our costumes, it's like they are moved by what's going on. And then you get to the end, and the end is this, it's hard to sit through the end. If you have problems with suicide, this is not the show to come see. If you have someone in your life that you are still dealing with the emotions of them committing suicide, this is not the show to come see. But if you, if that is not true for you, and you like something that's emotionally connecting, you like something that connects with you emotionally, this will be a powerful experience that you won't want to miss.
I would think for people who have had suicide touch their lives in some way, this production could be a way to work through some of those feelings, and because when someone takes their life, we go through grief, we go through anger, we go through anxiety. All of those things I think are touched upon in this.
Yes, well, the whole show is really taking you through the 5 stages of grief, with denial, and then bargaining, and anger and acceptance, and all those things are featured, and they go back and forth like in real life, from the bargaining to kind of acceptance to bargaining again, and so it's taking you through those 5 stages. And you're right, if someone has experienced someone in their world committing suicide, it might be cathartic to be able, and especially if you didn't understand why they did it, it might be a cathartic thing to come and see it from the perspective of someone who is at that point, who wants to die, and understand. Because what you do understand by the end of this play, you understand why Jessie is doing this. You might not agree with her, but you understand it in a profound way. Just like her mother understands it at the end. Her mother is still fighting to keep her alive, but she understands it at the end of why this motivation for her to do it is. And that is a profound thing to understand, even if it's painful.
Now, this is a 1-act, 90-minute play. With just two performers.
Actresses, yes.
That's a challenge unto itself as well.
Well,
and then this is, for those who don't know, you are at the cusp, the beginning of your directing.
Right.
You've directed 2 or 3 things. Right. Some of which were your own personal pieces that you wrote. And I think directing something that you're personally close to is very challenging unto itself. But then when you start directing things that other people have written, and you have to tap into their passions, that's a whole nother thing.
Oh yeah, and Night Mother is a blocking nightmare in many ways, and it's definitely a prop nightmare where we've got over 100 props, but the props are both a curse and a blessing, because the props are drawing the characters blocking wise throughout the entire show. So it's a blessing in that way, but it's a curse, and as the characters are always having to remember what they're supposed to be doing at that point, we have to gather all the props. And Wendy Ernst has been amazing with her collection of the props. And just the ability to spend that time focusing on these 2 characters has been great. It's hard to break up a 90-minute 1-act, 1-scene play into different segments to work on and to focus on. But there are within that 1 act, there are these different areas. There's the cocoa scene, there's the candy scene, there's the furniture rearranging scene, there's the gun loading scene. So there are all these scenes, and that we were able to break down so that we could just focus on certain parts of the play and not be running a 90-minute show every time we go in.
Right.
And there were a couple times when we just met and read through the script and worked on, well, what is the motivation with this? Why is this person saying this line? What does this line actually mean? And that's not something I would ever have been able to do in Annie or Heroicus, because we're always just rushing to get the choreography done, the music learned, and all the other aspects of a huge musical. And so for me, it's I love having directed Night Mother. I'm so proud of this. I'm so proud of Moira. I'm so proud of Abby. I'm proud of everybody involved in this. It's just an amazing show.
And when are show dates?
Show dates are March 13th, Friday, March 13th through Sunday, March 15th, and then it reopens again on the 19th through the 22nd. The Sundays are matinees at 3. The Friday, Saturday, and Thursday shows are open at 7. Call 270-351-0577 for tickets. And you can also click on the Hardin County Playhouse.org link or .org and find information about it there.
Sounds great. Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now somebody's bound to ask you why I did it, and you just say you don't know. That you loved me, and you know I loved you, and we just sat around tonight like every other night of our lives, and then I came over and kissed you and said, "Night, Mother," and you heard me close my bedroom door, and the next thing you heard was the shot. And whatever reasons I had, well, you guess I just took them with me.
Next up on the monthly Marquee, we have a very dear friend of the Performing Arts Center, Miss Melanie Roides, who has an exhibit right now at the Morrison Gallery on the ECTC campus. Melanie, it's always a delight to talk with you.
Thank you, Bart, and likewise.
So you are helping us at the PAC in many ways, mainly as a dialect coach, as we've been doing a lot of Sherlock Holmes. And where are you from originally, Melanie?
Well, I was born just outside of London, England. Greater London is considered. Grew up in Dover. Some people may have heard of the White Cliffs of Dover.
Oh, sure.
That's where I grew up. I did a painting of the White Cliffs, in fact. And went to art college just outside London, went to work in Germany for a number of years for the US Army, designed unit insignia, re-enlistment posters, things of that ilk. Met my husband, got married there. He had orders for Fort Knox, he was a soldier. And so I've lived here ever since, lived in Elizabethtown since 1989, so 31 years this year.
And your husband makes jewelry and things.
Oh, yeah, he does actually.
There
and
you
I'm
go,
wearing
yeah.
a piece, yeah. Yeah.
Get a little plug in for him too.
Well, yeah, why not?
Well, among the talents that you have and the things that you do, we wanted to talk specifically about painting today because it's part of an exhibit that you have at the Morrison Gallery right now, and it's a very particular type of painting that you do.
Oil painting at this juncture, yes. But I'm studying with a lady who was trained in Florence, Italy, and in Florence, apparently one of the tricks of painting, or one of the techniques, I suppose I should call it rather than a trick, is that you paint oil on board, but before, and this is the board, it's just a regular masonite board, looks like this before it's painted on. I prime it with a white gesso, and when that has dried, some red gesso, use an old-fashioned roller on it. And when that's dried, I then do my oil painting on top of it. I'm assuming that red enriches the colour or so forth.
Because you think white, you know, we think of a blank canvas, white.
I then go back and with a thin down dark oil, probably a, I don't know, sienna, something of that nature. I do my outline of what it is that I want to paint, what I want to focus on. I work from all of my own photographs that I've taken over the years, different places I've lived or travelled to, so they're rather personal to me. But even though they're personal, when I originally took a bunch of these photographs, I didn't realise I'd end up painting them because I came to painting later in life. I've always had a background in the arts, graphic arts, so forth, calligraphy. But as far as oils went, I didn't start oil painting until about 18 months ago.
What was it that drew you to that?
I just wanted to do something different, I suppose. I just wanted to try to express myself in another art form, and I've done a few different bits and pieces along the way, other art forms like acting, a wee bit of acting and so forth.
That's an interesting point I want to just stop on and pause for a second. One of the things I feel about performing arts is that it's so much a tool of lifelong learning. I really like that phrase, that as long as we are learning, as long as we are challenging ourselves to do something fresh and something new, we are staying vital.
Exactly. Yes, yes, I do agree. And I think it's necessary to prove to oneself that there are...
I still can.
Exactly, yes, exactly. I mean, there's life in the old dog yet. Kind of, okay, that's a bit corny, but nevertheless, I find that also I paint with some other ladies in the studio, and it's wonderful to talk
Very
turkey with
social.
other like-minded individuals. Yes, it's like any passion that you have, be it football or whatever. You want to talk to the people who have that shared interest, just because it gives it a bit more impetus and the shared experience.
Now,
that is.
personally, I have always been, because I do a little dabbling in painting and stuff as well, but I find oil painting intimidating. And maybe it's a matter of patience, because you have to have patience with oil. No?
Well, I have to say by nature, I'm really not a very patient person. I've done 30 oil paintings in the last 18 months, and I don't even paint every day, because when I get started on something, I want to work quickly.
That's me too.
However, oil does, if you want to make a change or have a certain colour, you need for the oil to dry before you can paint over or get the effect you originally perhaps wanted to achieve but could not. So I might spend 6 hours on a painting, perhaps a large painting, but it's not 6 hours consecutively. It could be 2 hours here, 2 hours another day, 2 hours and so forth. And in fact, sometimes I've got several going on the trot, so that I'm not hanging around waiting for the paint to dry. I'm doing a few other bits and pieces, other paintings that is, in between times. So I originally didn't think I'd be particularly good at oil painting, because calligraphy and graphic arts, which is what my background is, are very much controlled. And I think if you're going to get something going on canvas that is coming from within, you've got to let something just happen without controlling your tool too precisely.
Yes.
In other words, if I'm holding a calligraphy pen, I'm gripping it. Yeah, exactly. If I have a paintbrush, I want to hold it and let it take on a little bit of a life of its own, just have a little bit of fluidity that's not too controlled. I didn't actually think I'd be particularly good at oil painting, so I didn't ever attempt it until recently. And I'm delighted that I did, actually. It's helped me to see the world in new ways, and I suppose that's one of the things that art should do, both for the artist and the onlooker.
And I know you have the gallery exhibit going on right now. How else can people find out about your work, maybe to commission you or to purchase something that you've already created? How can they reach out to you?
Oh, thanks. Well, I do have my phone number, 270-737-4570. I have a web address, or I have an email address, I should say.
Yes.
And that's melanieroides@hotmail.com.
And what are some of your special? What do you live to? What do you embrace as an artist? Landscapes, portraits?
Mostly landscapes and seascapes, to recapture a sense of having been there. And vicariously through the artwork, I'm going back to a place that I once was. I don't really do portraits, but I did do one of my father.
I saw that one, yes. Yeah.
And had I known at the time when I took the photograph of my dad when we were going on a country walk, had I known then that years later I was going to paint him, I would have said, could you get your hand out of the way? Because hands are pretty difficult to paint. He had rather a large nose as well, and I think I would have said, could you just shift your head a bit that way? Because your nose is so big, Pa, it's not going to look good in an oil painting. That's the truth.
Well, we were talking before we got on camera about, we do so much digitally now with art and cropping and editing. But that's actually always been a part of art.
Yeah, it has. That's true, yes. There's an interesting story about Henry VIII when he was wanting to get married for the 4th time. In the days before photography, we're talking the 1500s here, he wanted to see Anna of Cleves because he thought she might be a potential wife, which she did in fact become. So he received a portrait of Anna of Cleves, and he thought, well, she looks the business. maybe quite a good proposition. Anyway, when she arrived, he had quite a nasty shock because apparently the painting was very complimentary in ways that just were not authentic at all. So, yeah, it's nothing new. It might be, I suppose, what's that old expression? Harry Truman said, there's nothing new in the world except the history you don't know. Exactly. It's true, isn't it? Really? So there's been editing and cropping going on, so it isn't just something I suppose people do to spruce themselves up on those dating sites and things of that nature.
It's always been going on.
Yeah, just slightly in a different format. This is the 21st century version of...
Well, speaking of editing and cropping, our time has come to an end.
Okay.
But thank you so much for being here, and it's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks, Bob. Bye-bye.
The play is the thing. With Kentucky Shakespeare back at the PAC later this month, it bears repeating that Shakespeare wrote his plays as entertainment, to be performed, not read. So, this month's blog, with a little help from Shakespeare for Dummies, is designed to help you get the most from their Friday, March 27 performance of Hamlet at the PAC. Unlike modern plays, Hamlet is hundreds of years old, and most everyone already knows how it ends. The fun is in seeing how the tale is told. So do yourself a favor and read a summary of the play before attending. You can find one on our website. Even though Hamlet takes place in Denmark, it is left up to the director and design team to interpret what their Denmark will be. The production may be historically accurate, or maybe the story will be told in a modern setting. The first thing you should do when the play begins is to determine who is who. If you know the major characters, try to find them on stage. You should be able to spot the king and queen, for example, from the way they dress, act, and interact with the other characters. Check your program to see which actors are playing multiple roles. Kentucky Shakespeare usually tours with a small number of actors than the shows that they do in the park each summer, so you can be sure that most of them will play more than one role. Usually the setting and costumes tell you which character the actor portrays in each scene, but knowing beforehand can help too. Yes, the actors are speaking English. It's just very old English. Be patient. Try to pick up on the emotion behind the words instead of the words themselves. After a bit, you may find that you start to recognize a few words here and there, but even if you don't, if the actors and direction are skilled, you should still be able to follow most of the plot. Hamlet is one of Shakespeare's longest plays, but don't panic. Kentucky Shakespeare has whittled the running time for their production down to a 90-minute space, while retaining the time-honored quotes and pivotal moments. So, read up before you go, study your program when you arrive, and watch and listen intently, and above all else, just enjoy the show. It'll all be worth the minimal prep on your part. After all, all's well that ends well. Unless your name is Hamlet.